The Palm Grove HOA in coastal Florida looked like paradise on the surface. Palm trees swaying, white picket fences gleaming, and every lawn cut to the exact 2.5-inch perfection demanded by the bylaws. But beneath that postcard perfection lurked Karen Whitaker, the self-appointed queen of seaside harmony. At 58, Karen had retired early from her accounting firm after some restructuring that everyone whispered involved creative bookkeeping. Now she ruled the HOA board with an iron clipboard and a smile that could curdle milk. I was Emma Hayes, 33, freelance software engineer, the neighbor Karen loved to hate. To her, my laptop lifestyle screamed financial irresponsibility. No corporate badge, no pension, just contracts that came and went like the tide. She'd corner me at every block party with that patronizing tone. Emma, dear, when are you going to get a real job? The dues aren't going to pay themselves if you keep playing on your computer. Her favorite stunt was announcing my supposed delinquencies at monthly meetings, even when my checks cleared on time. The other residents would nod sympathetically while Karen adjusted her pearl necklace and sighed about unstable neighbors dragging us all down. It started small. A $50 fine for my mailbox flag being 2 inches too high. Then a warning letter because my Honda was not up to community aesthetic standards. I paid every fine quietly, kept my yard pristine, and smiled through gritted teeth. What Karen didn't know, what no one knew, was that every dollar I didn't waste on appearances was multiplying in index funds, crypto, and the AI finance app I'd coded in my spare time. That app now pulled in $350,000 a year in passive income while I still drove the same 10-year-old car and lived in my modest 3-bedroom. The neighbors treated Karen like the family matriarch at Thanksgiving. She'd stand at the head of the potluck table, dispensing wisdom about 401(k)s and proper planning. Look at the Johnsons, she'd say, pointing to their perfectly compliant ranch. They followed the rules, and look where it got them. Then her eyes would slide to me. Unlike some people who think freelancing is a career, the group would chuckle nervously while I sipped my iced tea and counted the seconds until I could escape. My breaking point came at the annual HOA appreciation dinner 3 months ago. 200 residents packed the community clubhouse. Karen had arranged place cards with financial quotes. Mine read, "A penny saved is a penny earned." She stood at the podium in her pastel pantsuit, microphone crackling. We all know financial responsibility is the backbone of this community. That's why I'm sad to report that certain residents continue to jeopardize our harmony with unstable income and questionable choices. The spotlight found me. Emma Hayes, for instance, still hasn't upgraded her vehicle despite repeated reminders. And let's be honest, freelancers rarely have the discipline for long-term stability. The room went dead quiet. Mrs. Patel from 2 doors down shot me a pitying look. Mr. Reynolds coughed into his napkin. Karen smiled that saintly smile. I keep telling her, at your age you should have 6 months of expenses saved. But kids these days think gig work is sustainable. They spend everything they make. I could have stood up. I could have pulled out my phone and shown the 7-figure portfolio, the Bitcoin gains from 2017, the app royalties hitting my account like clockwork. Instead, I smiled sweetly. You're right, Karen. I should probably be more careful. She beamed, satisfied, and launched into her next lecture on compound interest. Something inside me snapped that night, not into rage, but into cold, crystalline clarity. Silence had protected me long enough. It was time to rewrite the narrative. That evening, I sat on my back patio, listening to the waves 2 blocks away, and started planning. Not revenge exactly. Revelation. I wanted Karen to taste the exact humiliation she'd served me for years. The public dismissal. The patronizing pity. The smug certainty that she knew my worth better than I did. While she was busy measuring grass blades and finding gnomes, I've been measuring returns. The irony tasted sweeter than her store-bought lemon bars. I dropped out of college at 20 after my first web business tanked. Endured the "I told you so" lectures from everyone, including Karen. Then clawed my way through self-taught coding. Stock options from an early startup sale had given me my first real cushion. Then the freelance contracts rolled in, $150 an hour for back-end work. Six-figure blockchain gigs. But I kept living small. No one suspected the woman with the Target wardrobe was quietly crossing 7 figures. Karen, meanwhile, bragged about her genius retirement, while still carrying a truck note at 7% and a country club membership financed against her 401k. She used financial superiority like a weapon to keep her HOA throne. Every public dig was about maintaining her image as the responsible one. I could have ended it with one bank statement years ago, but I wanted her to feel what it was like to be spectacularly, publicly wrong about someone she'd underestimated for a decade. The perfect moment arrived when Karen announced the HOA's 10th anniversary celebration. A grand walking tour of exemplary properties, she emailed the neighborhood. We'll see what true responsible living looks like when you follow the rules. The tour would wind past million-dollar homes along Ocean Boulevard, the crown jewels of our community. Karen planned to lecture the entire block on what proper planning can buy. I smiled at my laptop screen. The universe had delivered the stage. 3 weeks earlier, I'd wired $920,000 cash for 1847 Ocean Boulevard, the sleek modern waterfront masterpiece with floor-to-ceiling glass and private beach access. The deed sat in my drawer. Paid in full. No mortgage. No cosigner. No help from anyone. While Karen was polishing her clipboard, I closed quietly through an LLC. Tomorrow's tour would be the masterclass she never saw coming. The weeks leading up to the anniversary celebration were pure Karen theater. She sent daily emails with dress codes, itineraries, and reminders about appropriate neighborhood pride. Residents joked behind her back, but still showed up in matching Palm Grove polo shirts she'd ordered. I wore mine without complaint, playing the part of the compliant underachiever. Every time she passed my house on her daily inspections, tape measure in hand, I waved cheerfully. Grass looks perfect today. Karen. Inside, I was executing the final phase. The house at 1847 was move-in ready, white oak floors, chef's kitchen, office overlooking the Atlantic. I'd furnished it simply but beautifully. Nothing flashy, just quality pieces that felt like home. The master suite opened to a private deck where I could already picture morning coffee with the waves. But the Real prize waited in the kitchen drawer, a crisp folder containing the deed, closing statement, and wire confirmation. $920,000 transferred in full. Karen's hypocrisy was on full display during the pre-tour prep meeting. She stood at the clubhouse podium lecturing about smart debt versus reckless spending. Take my truck, for example, she said, projecting photos, leased responsibly against my assets. That's how you build equity. I knew the truth, 7% interest, payments 3 months behind. But I nodded along like a good little neighbor. Emma, she called out suddenly, you could learn from this. I noticed your car still hasn't been upgraded. At your age, with that unstable income, you should be thinking about building real assets. The room murmured agreement. Mrs. Patel whispered, she means well. I sipped my water. Absolutely. Karen, I'm working on it. She glowed with victory. What she didn't know was that my unstable income had just funded a beachfront mansion while hers funded late truck payments. The discipline of staying silent was brutal. Every time she measured my mailbox or fined me for excessive holiday lights, 3 strings, I reminded myself the payoff was coming. I'd learned from watching her that power wasn't about money. It was about narrative. She controlled the story of who was responsible and who wasn't. I was about to rewrite it in permanent ink. My path to this moment hadn't been the straight corporate ladder Karen worshipped. After my first business failed, I moved back home, waited tables, taught myself to code properly. Failure had been expensive tuition. By 22, I was back in school on my own dime, graduating with honors. The startup that hired me sold 3 years later. My equity stake dwarfed Karen's annual salary. I never told a soul. Freelancing followed. Karen saw it as quitting. She didn't see the $150 an hour contracts or the $75,000 Silicon Valley projects. The real money came from spotting trends early. Bitcoin when she called it fake internet money. Tesla before she dismissed electric cars as a fad. Then the finance app one bill during a slow month exploded to 100,000 paying users. 350,000 annually in passive income while I still shopped at Target. Meanwhile, Karen posted Facebook rants about irresponsible millennials, tagging me with laughing emojis. She'd offer unsolicited budget advice at every gathering while her own retirement account lagged behind my checking balance. The contrast was deliciously dark. The night before the tour, I did one final walkthrough of 1847 Ocean Boulevard. The ocean breeze carried the scent of possibility. I placed the folder in the kitchen drawer and locked up. 5 doors down, another open house sign advertised a property at $1.2 million. I wondered if Karen would pause there tomorrow, lecturing about how only the truly responsible could afford such luxury. I drove back to my modest house. Windows down, key to paradise in my pocket. The next 48 hours of Karen's pre-celebration events were masterful acting on my part. At the Saturday brunch, she held court explaining why index funds beat gambling on tech, pointing her bacon fork at me. See the difference between responsible neighbors and Emma? Some understand compound interest. Others chase get-rich-quick schemes. I stir my coffee. You're right, Karen. Get rich quick never works. She beamed. That afternoon, while others lounged by the pool, I actually worked. 2 hours fixing a client's system for $1,800. Karen walked by, shaking her head. Always working, never relaxing. That's what happens without paid vacation. I didn't look up. I like what I do. She scoffed. You'll mind when you're 60 and still debugging to pay rent. Evening game night turned into another seminar when Karen dominated Monopoly. See? Buying Boardwalk. That's what Emma could do if she saved instead of renting. I landed on her hotel and paid with a smile. Guess I'm bankrupt, she muttered. Story of your life. I kept my expression neutral while inside I laughed in that dark, delicious way that only comes from knowing the punchline is minutes away. Sunday morning dawned perfect, clear skies, light breeze, the kind of Florida day that made even Karen's rules seem almost reasonable. She had everyone assembled in the clubhouse lobby by 8 sharp, wearing the matching Palm Grove HOA 10th anniversary shirts she'd forced on us. I blended in like I always had. The quiet neighbor no one noticed. Today, Karen announced, clipboard raised like a scepter. You're going to witness what financial success and rule following truly look like. These waterfront properties start at $1 million. Some go for 3 or 4. This is the difference between hoping and planning. We walked north along the beach path. Karen pointed out architectural features and estimated values with the confidence of someone who'd never actually owned any of them. See that Mediterranean? Probably 1.8 million. The modern next door? At least 2.2. Notice the hurricane windows? Another 50,000 right there. Neighbors oohed and awed, snapping photos. Younger residents joked about lottery wins. I stayed quiet, counting houses as we passed. We were getting close. Karen warmed to her favorite theme. Most people will never own something like this. Statistically, 99% of Americans can't afford beachfront. But that's because they don't start early, don't save consistently, don't invest wisely. Her eyes found me. They think freelancing and gig work will magically make them rich. 3 houses away now. My pulse quickened, but my face stayed neutral. Karen gestured ahead. The really exclusive ones have direct beach access and private walkways. Those are special. She stopped in front of an impressive estate. This one's probably $3 million easy. I spoke casually. Actually, that one sold last year for 2.4. Market's been soft in ultra-luxury. Karen frowned. How would you know? I walk here sometimes. You hear things. I pointed ahead. There's a great coffee spot just past those next houses. Should we grab espresso after? My treat. She ignored the suggestion and resumed lecturing. We passed another home, then another, until we stood directly in front of 1847 Ocean Boulevard. My house. Karen barely glanced at it. Modern construction. Good bones. These run about $1.5 million, depending on interior. Mrs. Patel breathed. Can you imagine waking up to that view? Karen laughed. Keep dreaming unless you've got a spare million lying around. I pulled out my phone, pretending to check the time. You know what? That coffee place is right there. But I just remembered a friend actually knows the owner of this exact house. She said I could show family or neighbors around if I was ever in the area. Karen scoffed. Right. You have friends with beach houses. I was already walking toward the front door. It's just right here. Let me see if she's home. The group followed more out of curiosity than belief. Karen trudged behind, ready to watch her irresponsible neighbor embarrass herself. I reached the mahogany door with frosted glass panels and made a show of knocking. Maybe she's on the beach side. I pulled out my keys, finding the right one with practiced ease. She did say I could use the spare. The lock turned smoothly. The door opened into a sun-filled foyer with soaring ceilings and ocean views straight through the house. Oh my God, Mrs. Patel whispered. I stepped inside, disabling the alarm with my code. Come in, everyone. She won't mind. They filed in slowly, eyes wide. Morning light streamed through the glass, making white oak floors glow. The Atlantic stretched endlessly beyond. This is incredible, someone breathed. My sympathetic neighbor from the potluck covered her mouth. Karen stood frozen in the doorway. Emma, we can't just walk into someone's house. Sure we can, I said, strolling toward the kitchen. Anyone want coffee? The machine here is amazing. Neighbors spread out, exploring, gasping at every window. Someone found the balcony and called others over. The house filled with excited voices. Karen finally entered, face tight with confusion and dawning fear. Emma, whose house is this? I opened the drawer and pulled out the folder. Oh, that's a good question. I unfolded the deed slowly. Karen snatched it, eyes scanning. I watched her face change as she read the owner line. Emma L. Hayes, sole owner. The room went silent. Everyone watched now. This is fake, she said flatly. Some kind of joke. I handed her the closing statement showing the $920,000 wire transfer paid in full. The jokes are usually funnier, I replied. She studied the papers with the eye of a former accountant. The moment she accepted they were real, her hand started shaking. Ow! The word came out strangled. I took the documents back. Turns out freelancing pays better than you thought. Cryptocurrency too. And that app you said would never amount to anything. It did. But you live in that tiny house. You drive that old car. By choice, I said simply. Because I was saving for something better than truck payments and country club memberships. The silence stretched. Neighbors stood frozen, processing. Karen's face cycled red to white to red. How long? She asked finally. How long have you had this kind of money? Years, I admitted. But you were so sure you knew my financial situation. I didn't see the point in correcting you. Publicly, repeatedly, at every single meeting. Mr. Reynolds let out a low whistle. Holy Emma. I walked to the sliding doors. Anyone want to see the deck? The view's even better outside. The neighbors slowly dispersed across the house and deck, their chatter turning from shock to delight. Karen remained rooted in the living room, still clutching the closing documents like they might dissolve into lies. I stayed with her, waiting for the full weight to land. This doesn't make sense, she muttered, more to herself. You can't afford this. You don't have a real job. No pensión. No 401k. Propre investments. I have all of those things, I interrupted quietly. Just not the way you define them. She looked up sharply. Don't lie to me. Not now. I'm not lying. I never was. I pulled out my phone and opened the investment app. Index funds. Karen, just like you always preached. Want to see the balance. She waved it away, face contorting. This is impossible. Where did the money come from? Really? I told everyone at the dinner last month. Bitcoin. You just didn't believe me. I ran my hand along the marble island. Also Tesla stock bought in 2016. The app you've never asked about. Freelance contracts that pay more per hour than you made per day. It all adds up. She swallowed hard. $1 million more than that. Actually, this house was $920 cash. I still have plenty left. The words hit her like physical blows. She sank onto a bar stool, suddenly looking every one of her 58 years. My younger neighbor, Jamie, bounded in from the deck. Emma, is that a hot tub out there? This place is insane. Thanks, I said. Eyes still on Karen. Feel free to try it out sometime. Jamie disappeared again, leaving us in heavy silence. Through the windows, I could see Mrs. Patel on the deck, hand over her mouth, happy tears in her eyes. What? Karen's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? I almost laughed. Tell you when? During the meeting where you announced I had no savings? The brunch where you said I was one missed payment from disaster? The game night where you called my life a failure? I was trying to help you. No, I cut her off. You were trying to feel superior. There's a difference. She flinched. The truths we don't want to hear always cut deepest. All those times, I continued, voice steady. You never once asked if I was okay. Never asked about my work, my plans, my successes. You just assumed I was failing because my path didn't look like yours. But you let me believe what you needed to believe to keep your little throne. I gestured around the house. Would knowing I had money have changed how you treated me? Or would you have just found other ways to diminish what I'd accomplished? Mrs. Patel appeared in the doorway. Emma, the office upstairs is incredible. Is that where you work? Sometimes, I said. When I'm here. She sensed the tension and retreated. Karen stared at her hands. How much? Total. How much are you worth? Does it matter? Is there a number that would make you respect me? A balance that would make you see me as successful? That's not fair, she whispered. I moved closer. You've spent years using money as a weapon, making me feel small, inadequate, irresponsible. Now you want exact figures. Why? So you can find a way to make it seem less impressive. For the first time in a decade, I saw genuine uncertainty in her eyes. I don't know what to say. That's a first. The joke fell flat. She rubbed her face. Exhausted. Emma, I thought I was protecting the community, preparing everyone for a life where worth is measured in employer matches and rule compliance, where success only counts if it comes with your approval. I shook my head. You prepared me perfectly, Karen, just not how you intended. Mrs. Patel returned, practically glowing. Emma, this is extraordinary. I'm so proud of you. Others followed, offering congratulations, asking questions about the house, the view, the neighborhood. I answered on autopilot, watching Karen shrink into herself as the same neighbors who had nodded along to her lectures for years now celebrated the woman she'd spent a decade mocking. Mr. Reynolds pulled me aside. That was incredible. The way you just let her talk all weekend knowing this was coming. It wasn't about revenge, I said loud enough for Karen to hear. It was about truth. The group gradually moved back outside, giving us space. Karen stood slowly, age showing in every movement. What happens now? She asked. Now, nothing changes. You're still the president. I'm still the neighbor. Except now you know that your irresponsible neighbor owns the house you spent years saying I'd never afford. Don't say that. You're not irresponsible. Since when? I asked. Since 5 minutes ago, when you found out I have money? She had no answer. The math was too simple. The conclusion too obvious. I picked up the folder. You know what the ironic part is? I would have traded all of this, the house, the money, every penny, for just one meeting where you asked about my work with genuine interest, where you celebrated my successes instead of inventing my failures. Emma, she trailed off. But you couldn't do that. Because if I was successful without following your rules, what did that say about the rules? I headed for the deck. Enjoy the view. Karen, stay as long as you want. The house isn't going anywhere. The neighbors lingered another hour, exploring every corner, taking photos on the deck, marveling at the reality of what I'd accomplished. Karen spent most of that time on the balcony staring at the ocean, silent. Mrs. Patel sat with her for a while. Their conversation was too quiet to hear over the waves. Eventually, people began making excuses to leave. The anniversary celebration officially continued that evening. But everyone knew the real ending had already happened. They filed out with hugs, congratulations, and promises to visit. Several neighbors whispered variations of, about time someone put her in her place. Finally, only Karen and a few board members remained. Mrs. Patel squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. Emma, I always have been. I know, I said. She glanced at Karen. She needs time. She said 10 years, I replied. Karen turned back at the door, looking like she'd aged a decade in an hour. Emma, she started, then stopped. Several times, she opened her mouth, searching for words that wouldn't come. Finally, she managed. The truck you mentioned, my truck. What about it? How did you know I still owe money on it? I smiled sadly. Because I know you, Karen, better than you ever bothered to know me. She absorbed that, nodding slowly. The house is beautiful. Thank you. I mean it. You did good. I know I did. The question is whether you would have known it without seeing this house. She had no answer. They left quietly. I stood in my house and felt the silence settle around me like an old friend. Through the windows, the afternoon sun painted the ocean in gold and turquoise. I made myself a cup of tea and carried it to the deck, settling into one of the teak loungers the previous owner had left. My phone buzzed with messages, neighbors sharing photos, board members expressing shock and sudden respect, friends who'd already heard through the lightning-fast HOA grapevine. I ignored them all. This moment wasn't for them. I thought about Karen's question. What happens now? The truth was nothing had to happen. I'd proven my point, revealed my truth, shattered her narrative. But I hadn't done it to destroy her, despite what she might think. I'd done it to free myself from the weight of her dismissal, the burden of her approval. Tomorrow I'd go back to my modest house, my old car, my quiet life. 1847 Ocean Boulevard would be here when I needed it. A weekend escape, a writing retreat, a symbol of what's possible when you define success for yourself. But it wouldn't define me any more than her opinion had. My phone rang. Karen's number. I let go to voicemail. A few minutes later, I listened. Emma, it's Karen. I wanted to say something, but I don't know what. Maybe that's the problem. I always had something to say about you, but never to you. Not really. I'm sorry. Sorry was a start. But trust would take more than apologies delivered to voicemail. It would take change, real change. And that was something Karen would have to figure out on her own. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in pink and orange. I raised my teacup to the horizon, toasting silently to unexpected success, to patient justice, to the sweet satisfaction of being underestimated by people who confused volume with wisdom. But mostly I toasted to silence, the blessed, peaceful silence of no longer needing anyone's validation, not even hers. As darkness fell, I locked up and walked back along the beach toward the community center. In the distance, I could see the lights of the anniversary dinner venue, where Karen was probably already spinning a new narrative. How she'd always known I had potential. How she'd push me to achieve. How proud she'd always been. Let her. Stories are just words, and words couldn't change the truth. The truth was written in deeds and wire transfers, in years of quiet work and careful planning. In a neighbor who'd learned the greatest lesson the HOA president never meant to teach. The best revenge isn't served cold. It's served in cash with an ocean view to someone who never saw it coming. I smiled and kept walking, leaving footprints in the sand that the tide would wash away by morning. But the house would still be there. The money would still be mine. And Karen would still be measuring grass blades while the community finally saw who was truly responsible all along. Some truths, it turns out, are worth more than any fine, any rule, or any clipboard. Thank you for listening to this HOA Karen drama. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of neighborhood revenge and sweet justice, please subscribe and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Emma's situation? I can't wait to read your perspectives.